today I will be talking about child abuse. I'm going to ask if half of the class could please stand up this side. Alright, you guys represent the 48.2% of child victims that are boys, and the rest that are sitting down, you guys represent the 51.5% of girls. You can sit down. Today I will discuss child abuse, and by the end of my discussion, you will realize the importance of child abuse and how it affects our loved ones. For federal fiscal year 2006, 48.2% of child victims were boys, and 51.5% of child victims were girls. This information was found from Recognizing Child Abuse and Neglect Defined, Child Abuse Sourcebook 2009. Now that you know what I will be talking about, let me go on to my first main topic, is signs and symptoms. Some of the signs and symptoms of child abuse include Second main topic is causes of child abuse, and third is effects of child abuse. Now that you know what I will be talking about, let's move on to the first main topic, which is signs and symptoms. This information is found from Recognizing Child Abuse and Neglect, Signs and Symptoms, Child Abuse Sourcebook 2009. One of the most common signs of child abuse would be being frequently absent from school, which is a sign of neglect. If the parent is not taking their child to school for more than a couple days, the teacher and staff will be concerned, and something is obviously going up, so that is a sign of neglect. Another sign of child abuse would be unexplained burns, bruises, or black eyes. That is obviously a sign of physical abuse, and the most common areas to see that would be the face or the arms. If you do see a child with burns or bruises or scratches on the face or arms, that obviously is considered physical abuse, and that needs to be reported. A third sign and symptom of child abuse would be being secretive and isolated, which is considered sexual abuse. Nowadays, children are always playful. They like to play with other children. If we see that they're not wanting to cooperate or play with other children, then something is wrong, because children are always wanting to play with others. This information was found from Child Abuse and Neglect, Signs and Symptoms, Child Abuse Sourcebook 2009. Now that you know about the signs and symptoms, let's move on to the causes of child abuse. This information is found from the impact on teachers of supporting children exposed to domestic abuse, Educational and Child Psychology Academic Search Web 2012. One of the most important causes of child abuse would be violence in the home, and as you see in this picture, the child is sitting there while the parents or the adults are arguing in front of the child. That is a cause of child abuse, because the child is obviously in front of the parents while they're arguing. They're probably thinking, oh, why are they doing this, and stuff like that. So a second cause of child abuse would be social stress, such as the child, if they're at school, being bullied by friends, or just going to school and not being able to get the affection from their parent when they do leave to school. A third cause of child abuse would be family structure. If the child is living in the home with divorced parents, just the mother or the father, that affects the child, and that is a cause of child abuse. Now that you know about the causes of child abuse, I'm going to speak a little bit about effects of child abuse. This information is found from Physical Abuse of Children, Identification, Evaluation, and Management in the ED setting from the web 2012. One of the most common effects of child abuse would be behavioral and psychological consequences. The child starts to act differently, behave differently, and they could also speak differently. They could start saying things such as they hate their parents, or they don't want to go to school, or certain things like that. Another effect of child abuse would be health consequences. They start to perhaps eat less or not eat at all, and that obviously is important. The children need to eat to get the nutrition they need. A third effect of child abuse would be child fatalities. If they're getting physically abused or sexually abused, the children could perhaps die, which is common nowadays. And now that you know about the effects of child abuse, I'm going to go on and recap a little bit about the child abuse. And the most important topics that I thought were important was being secretive and isolated is obviously a sign of child abuse. Violence in the home is a common cause of child abuse, and child fatalities are a major effect. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Crystal Sarah, and I would please ask for 12 of you to stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, can everybody just sit down for me and just use the Okay. According to the semi-annual survey on youth risk behaviors, nearly 1 in 12 high school students have attempted suicide. You can sit down. Okay, today I will be talking about teen suicide and what we can do to prevent it and what teens go through. Okay, one of my main points, the 3 main points that I will be speaking about are firstly the causes of teen suicide. Then we're going to talk about a little bit about signs that they may attempt suicide, and then lastly we're going to talk about prevention of teen suicide. And this information was taken from Teen Suicide and Introduction. Okay, causes of teen suicide. One of the causes are feelings of hopelessness and anxiety. For teenagers, sometimes their overwhelming hopelessness is enough to cause them to take their own lives. Most teens who survive suicide attempts say that they tried to kill themselves because they were trying to escape a situation that seemed impossible to deal with, or they were trying to escape overwhelming feelings like rejection, guilt, sadness, or even anger. Anxiousness and hopelessness, anxiety and hopelessness, can be also symptoms of mental illnesses that they may have. Another cause of teen suicides is bullying. Bullying has been one of the major causes of teens committing suicide. Many teens nowadays get bullied by their sexual orientation. Other causes are due to race, and as unfortunate as it seems, mental illnesses and learning disabilities. Lastly, the last cause of teen suicide that we'll be talking about would be substance abuse. In 2008, nearly 1/10 of drug-related ED visits made by adolescents ages 12 to 17 involved suicide attempts. And this information, I took it from Causes of Teen Suicide, livestrong.com. Now that you know a little bit about the causes of teen suicide, we're going to be talking about the signs that someone may attempt suicide. Like expresses worries that nobody cares, like not wanting to be a part of this world anymore, maybe wanting to take their own lives. Another sign could be dramatic changes in personality, behavior, and appearance. For example, like running away from home or not being a part of social events as many. And also parents like not caring about what you're wearing black all the time, or not going to school. Also show signs of substance abuse problems and depressions, like for example, taking drugs, alcohol, and over-the-counter prescriptions. And I took this information from Kids Health about teen suicide. A way we can prevent teen suicide is talk to the person and listen. If you know someone that maybe is feeling depressed or is thinking about taking their own lives, please talk to them. Everyone needs a shoulder to listen. A shoulder to cry on and a ear to listen. Nobody should be feeling alone. Another prevention we can do is show love and give attention, like relatives, showing attention to doing that extra step to showing them that you care. And then professional help, for example, psychologists, or maybe taking them to a teen suicide classroom. And this information I took from Prevention Teen Suicide. We're going to recap what we talked about today. The main causes was depression and bullying. As I said before, bullying is one of the main causes. And if you see someone that is being bullied or that, like I said before, wants to take their own lives, just please listen and be there for them. Give support, show support. Another way we can avoid that is by professional help or even relatives being there for them. You can also call a hotline. It's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255. Okay?
Non-fluencies, yeah. Non-fluencies. Huh?
I wrote it down.
What else?
I wrote it down.
Just wrote it down on the note. Just tell me.
Just count.
Make it.
If it's, listen, if it's ever more than 11, you just say more than 11. Huh? It's okay. Everybody else heard it too. I feel bad. I mean, it's not going to make anybody fail. Citations. Who was counting citations? They were, now, remember, Travis, they have to be at the beginning. I was taking notes, so it's okay. I forgot to say that to you before we started. It had to be at the beginning of the slide.
It's done.
Today, I will be demonstrating about a man named Lieutenant General Louis B. Chesty Puller, and I'm going to ask the class to stay seated because nobody in this class has 5 Navy crosses, 27 ribbons in total, so there's really nothing much to demonstrate with the class. So let's move on to the next slide. He's the most decorated. He's one of the most decorated Marines in Marine Corps history. And next slide. Yeah, next slide. And we're gonna talk about first. The main point we're gonna talk about is his early life. And I got this from the book Marine: The Life of Chesty Puller, and the author was Burke Davis. And his early life, he was born in 1898, June 26, West Point, Virginia, in the United States. And he attended school in the Virginia Military Institute. His mother and father were Matthew and Martha Puller, and his father was a grocer, and he died when he was 10 years old. So leaving him the head of the household. Afterwards, he enlisted in the Virginia Military Institute, and he stayed there for 1 year until he decided to leave during the ongoing of World War I. He stated that he wanted to go where the guns were at. So yeah, he left at the end of the Virginia Military Institute. Prior to that, he wanted to join the Army, but he was too young and he couldn't get his mother's consent. So he went to that school and waited until he was 18, until finally he was old enough to join the Marines. His basic influence for joining the Marines was, the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, where they fought in the Belle Woods. And his main influence for that was because they were an inspiration to him because they held off the German forces against the French, and it was like a murderous battle because there was like very few Marines and like 1,700 German forces with barbed wire, sharpshooters, tanks, crazy stuff. So this is the next main point is we're going to talk about his how he influenced the Marine Corps and his culture in it. And this is also from the book of Burke Davis. So first thing we're going to talk about is boot camp in Parris Island. One of the main influences he has on Parris Island is when you attend boot camp, you often end your night by saying, good night, Chesty Puller, wherever you're at. So, that's how one of the traits he's influences in boot camp, During physical training, you're often running cadence calls, and they're often included with Chesty Puller, and just, next slide. And then, he also influences the Marine Corps with the Warriors Creed, with his honor, courage, and commitment. And he signifies a lot of honor, and he has courage. And next slide. That's it.
My name is Debbie. If I can have you guys all count off by ones and twos. So 1, 2, 1,
2.
1, 2. 1, 2. Wow. 12.
2,
2.
1,
2.
Can I please have all the twos stand up? Those of you standing represent the 50% of teens that believe prescription drug abuse is safer than using illegal street drugs. You guys may all sit down. This information was gathered by the Drug Free World Foundation. They also said that of those 50%, 60 to 70% of you said you get your prescription pills from your own family's medicine cabinets. Today, I will inform you about prescription drug abuse. And by the end of my speech, you'll be able to better recognize why abusing prescription drugs are dangerous and how you can save a loved one's life. First, I will talk about how easily accessed prescription drugs have become over the years. Next, I will explain to you why just because prescription drugs are prescribed by doctors does not make them safe. And lastly, I will define tolerance and addiction and how it affects everyone. Now that I told you what we will be talking about, let's get started with how easily accessed prescription drugs have become. This information was written by Greg Kritzer in the book Generation RX. Doctors are overwriting a lot of prescriptions. Greg told us in his book about a survey that they did in a South Florida pain clinic. They sent in about 100 new clients, and within that day, over 75% of those new clients left with a prescription that day for narcotics. We're also going to talk about how teens are getting their prescriptions from their family's medicine cabinets. Most teens nowadays are going into their family's medicine cabinets, grabbing a random pill bottle, and just taking the prescriptions, not knowing what they're taking, not knowing the milligrams, and that is very dangerous. Teens, in turn, then become drug dealers and criminals by taking pills that do not belong to them. If anything happens with those pills that they handed out, they can be held responsible. Now that I told you about how easily accessed prescription drugs have become, let's talk about why just because a doctor writes prescriptions does not make them safe. This information was written by Jane Carlisle Maxwell in an article, The Prescription Drug Epidemic in the United States, A Perfect Storm. Why do teens think prescription drugs are safe? And Jane let us know that the main reason is because doctors write prescriptions. However, doctors are writing prescriptions for a certain person. If you take someone else's medication, it's not for you, not prescribed to you. There are negative side effects to taking prescription pills. There can be an allergic reaction, you can have an accidental overdose, many things because you don't know what exactly you're taking and what you're putting into your body. Like I said, with the accidental overdose, if you do take the wrong mixture, it can be fatal. If you take an upper and a downer, your body cannot regulate that, and that is what causes an overdose. Now that I told you about why just because they're prescribed by doctors doesn't make them safe, let's talk about tolerance and addiction. This information came from the Drug Abuse Sourcebook by Joyce B. Shannon. Tolerance. By definition, tolerance is when you take prescriptions or anything and you take it too often. You have to take a larger amount to achieve the initial effects of the drug. So you build up a tolerance level and you have to keep taking more. Addiction, by definition, is the continued use of a mood-altering substance despite adverse dependency. That means is an addict will do almost anything to get their hands on a pill. They will a pill, a drink, whatever it is that they're addicted to. Now, addiction doesn't affect just the addict, it affects everyone. It affects your job, your family, your friends. An addict will do anything. They will lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, whatever they can do to get their hands on what they're addicted to. Now that I told you about tolerance and addiction, I want to wrap up and I want you to remember a few key points. Let's remember that just because prescription pills are prescribed by doctors does not make them safe. It is a crime to steal someone else's prescriptions and give them out to other people, and you can be held reliable. And lastly, addiction is a disease. You can't just quit.
Alright, my name is Dina Secord, and today I'll talk to you guys about adoption. For my demonstration, I'm going to have everyone stand up. Can you guys count yourselves off? Like, Alright. Can you just start counting from 1 to the end of the class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8, 9, 11, 12,
13, 14,
15.
16,
17.
18, 19, 20.
Alright, can 18 of you guys sit down? Like the first 18. Alright.
Oh.
Okay, 3 of you guys just stand up. Alright, you 3, okay. You guys are going to represent the amount of children that are adopted that are rated to have good or excellent health. Alright, you guys can sit down. According to American adoptions, well over half, I messed up on there. Whatever, according to American adoptions, 85% of children who are adopted are rated to have very good or excellent health. My 3 main points are that why people adopt, the percent of children adopted, and the treatment of adopted children. According to American Adoptions and the American Adoptions Agency, people adopt mainly to give children a permanent home, like so that they just have a good home to live in, and a permanent one that they're not going to have to switch from place to place. To expand families, so people who like don't have children, they don't want to give birth, they'll just adopt to make their family bigger. And also because the mother can be infertile, so they can't have kids, they're going to want to adopt to feel the same way as if they could have kids. Now that you know why people adopt, I'm going to tell you about the percent of children adopted. According to our mission, it's an article that I got from the web. Okay. 2% of the entire population are adopted. Out of that 2% that are adopted, 37% are white, which is the highest ethnicity of children who are adopted. And also out of that 2% of the entire population, 43% have lived with their birth parents before they were adopted into another family. According to the same article, our mission from the web, I'm going to tell you about the treatment of adopted children. Nearly 3 out of every 4 children who are adopted between the ages of 0 and 5 are read to or sang to on a daily basis. Also, over half of children who are adopted all around the world eat dinner with their families at least 6 times per week, which is way more than a lot of us eat dinners with our families on a daily. Also, children who are adopted are said to be treated better than children who live with both parents, both biological parents. They said that, I guess it's just because to make the adopted child feel more comfortable, as if they really have, like their real parents. All right, now that you guys know that, I'm gonna recap some of the things that I spoke about on adoption. The main reason, well, a main reason people adopt is to give children a permanent home, for someone who can provide better for them than they can. Nearly 3 out of every 4 children between the ages of 0 and 5 who are adopted are read to or sang to daily. And children who are adopted are treated better than children who are not adopted. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, my name is Ben Stankic. Everyone stand up except for the very last table back there. Everyone stand up. Alright, so the 20 of you that are standing out of 22 represent the 20 out of 22 Arab countries that are currently in revolution. You can sit down now. This is according to information from the CIA World Factbook. And the Arab Spring started in December 2010. Today I will talk to you about the Arab Spring, and by the end you will gain knowledge of the changing face of revolution and understand one of the biggest events of the 21st century. The 3 main points I'll be talking about today are: first, the need for change, why so many Arabs hate their governments. Next is the people's protest, what the people are doing to change these governments. And lastly, the government's responses, what the government is doing to either stop or appease these protesters. Now that I've told you my 3 main points, I'll talk to you about the need for change in the Arab world. This information comes from a book by James L. Gilvin, who wrote The Arab Uprisings, What Everyone Needs to Know. The first reason for change is government corruption. Many leaders have been in power for far longer than they were elected to be, such as President of Egypt, who was in power for 30 years before he was overthrown. These dictators also imprison, torture, and even kill any candidates who try to run against them. They've also become extremely wealthy. Hosni Mubarak is estimated to be worth between $40 and $70 billion, which would make him the richest man in the world. Another contribution to revolutions are pre-existing people groups that are already in conflict, as well as the dislike for Sharia law, which is a Muslim fundamentalist law that limits women's rights and requires many religious customs that most Muslims say are too extreme. Now that I've talked about the desire for change in these nations, we'll talk about what the people have done to protest under governments. Many citizens have turned, this is from the United Nations newsletter, their website. Many citizens have turned to social media, sites like Facebook, Twitter, and blogging tools to organize protests and post news and videos of what's going on in the revolutions. There have been some extreme cases of protests such as this one in Tahrir Square in Egypt, where millions of people were gathered in this one area just to protest the government. You can even see tents here where people have camped out for weeks. There have also been reports of self-immolation, where people have set themselves on fire and burned to death to prove their point to the government. Obviously, most of these protests have become violent, and the government has sent police and army officers with clubs, tear gas, and even tanks to break up demonstrations. Now that I've talked about the protests of Arab citizens, I'll talk about how the governments have responded. This is from an article by The Guardian. It's the Arab Spring, and the title, Interactive Timeline of Middle East Protests. Internet censorship is one of the main ways the governments have used to stop mass organizations and the flow of news in and out of the country. 3 governments have completely shut down access to the internet, and other governments have gone as far as killing any bloggers that have voiced their opposition to them. Fortunately, some corrupt leaders have stepped down or been forced to resign in face of so much pressure. However, there has been a civil war that has broken out in Syria over a political party that has been in power for over 5 decades. This has resulted in 60,000 deaths, 1.2 million people being displaced from their homes, and up to 500,000 refugees fleeing the country to escape the violence. As I come to the end of my speech, I would like to recap some main points. Most Arab countries' governments have become corrupt. The leaders have taken advantage of their power to stop any opposition towards them. However, the effect of connecting through the internet has given voice to protesters and allowed them to organize in order to bring change to their country. Lastly, the Arab Spring crisis is far from over. But because everyday citizens have risen up, we've been able to make a real impact on how their country is run and bring justice for their people. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bailey Silva, and I'd like to start by counting you off 1 through 4. 1, 2,
4,
1,
3,
2, 1,
2,
3,
1, 2,
3,
4, 1.
2,
3,
4.
Will all the threes please stand up? You all represent the percent of mammals that are currently facing extinction. According to Shasta Endangered Species, 1 in 4 species of mammals are currently at risk of extinction. Today I will speak to you about the Endangered Species Act. By the end, you will understand the beneficial changes that this act has had on the environment. First, I will speak about why the act was created. Then I will speak about how the act was created. And last, why it is important. Now that you know what I'll be speaking out, first I'll talk about why the act was important. According to Michelle Nias, which species will live, the act was created. Numbers of endangered species have been growing rapidly. Because of human activities such as habitat deforestation, poaching, and other drastic environmental changes, currently 1 in 4 mammals, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 3 amphibians, and 1/2 of all reptiles evaluated by the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List are currently at risk of extinction. More than 1 species every year is currently going extinct. That's, in the last 500 years, more than 800 species have gone extinct because of human activity. And then more than 70% of all plant species are endangered. That means that of all the evaluated plants, less than 1/3 of the plant species that were evaluated have no risk of becoming extinct right now. Now that you know a little bit about why the act was created, let's talk about how the act was created. According to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service Endangered Species Program, the act combined and expanded upon 2 less effective provisions. These were the Environmental Species Protection Act and the Environmental Species Conservation Act. Both of these acts were trying to do the same thing that the Environmental Species Act is doing right now, but they weren't as effective. They didn't include things such as the different levels of endangered species and the inclusion of plants and all that kind of stuff that this is including. And that's why the Environmental Species Protection Act is a lot more effective. How the components of the act were chosen. The components of the act were chosen with help of a lot of different wildlife organizations such as World Wildlife Fund and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, with help from the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Senate in order to create an act that encompassed all of the problems that needed to be addressed, including plants and the different levels of extinction and all that kind of stuff that were not addressed in the other acts. And then about the passing of the act. At first, the act was met with a lot of opposition from especially from like construction companies that wanted building rights in habitats that had a lot of deforestation, and they weren't allowed to have those because that was leading to the endangerment of a lot of different animals. And so that opposition was eventually overruled by the United States Senate, and the act was passed in 1973. Now that you know about how the act was created, let's talk a little bit about why it is important. According to the U.S. Senate Endangered Species Act, it created a distinction between levels of threatened species. So now there wasn't just animals that were endangered and about to become extinct, there were also animals that were at risk and animals that were threatened to become endangered. That means that it was helping to solve a problem before it even really arose and they were too far to come back. Improvements since the act was passed. Since the act was passed, more than 90% of all endangered species are on track to recovery, actually. And one example of this is there's this animal in North America called the black-foot ferret, and it was recently taken off the endangered species list and lowered to a status of threatened, and that means that it's not at risk of extinction anymore, it's just at risk of endangerment. And it doesn't anymore need to be released into the wildlife because they can now breed by themselves, which is good. And then the ecosystem is a delicate balance. So if one animal goes extinct, then that can cause another animal to go extinct. It would be like a chain of events. And then now that you know a little bit about why it is important, I want you to remember these facts. In the last 500 years, more than 800 species have gone extinct. over 70% of plants are threatened with extinction. And since the act was passed, more than 90% of endangered species are on track to recovery. Thank you.
Can be that, and until then I'm going to talk and how many of you drink coffee? Can you stand up? Okay, how many of you believe that coffee can be more like a drink? It can be used more like a drink. Okay, that's okay because coffee can, now you can sit down, thank you. It's okay because now coffee can be used in a strange way. According to coffee state, coffee can be used in many different ways. Now I'm going to talk about my main point is going to be about how coffee can be used indoors, outdoors, and how coffee saves the environment. Now you know about my treatment point. I'm going to talk about how can it be used indoors. This information it came from Osceola that was published in 2011. Coffee can get help to get your hair shine by being a natural treatment. So you just apply to dry clean hair and let it rest for 20 minutes and you will see a difference in your hair. Coffee can help you clean all kinds of surfaces. Kitchen tub, bathroom tub, any kind of surface. The reason is because coffee has the acid that helps you do it. And coffee can kill bad odor because of the smell that's so strong and good. They use any air freshener or anything. And now that you know about my first main point, let's talk about how can it be used indoors. This information I got from the Blue Bottle Graph that was published by the Freeman Brothers in this year, lately. Coffee has to do with ants because ants hate coffee because of the strong smell. So if you ever want to get rid of ants, just put coffee around it and ants can go away to find another home, to another place. Coffee can help plants because it's a food for them. You can feed them, and especially blueberry plants because they love that kind of food. And coffee can help you grow mushrooms because coffee has the acid is strong, it's metastatic, and coffee can produce up to 1.5 pounds of mushroom when you plant it. Now that you know about the outdoor main point, let's talk about how can it save the environment. Coffee can help you to start as a vermicomposter because one love that food because they like it, they taste it, and it can say they know a freshener because they, like I said before, like coffee has a strong smell that you can smell it all around the house, that you can save money on that, and there's not chemicals because the fact that the coffee is so strong, you can save the money, and it can be, it's a healthy treatment, it's a healthy way to freshen your house and nobody can get hurt or injured. And this information was from the interview that was made to Katie done by Kitchening. Now that you know my treatment point, I want you to remember this fast. The coffee can help plants, can help grow and can start vermicomposting. Thank you.